it was the weirdest thing. It's got a lot of coverage on Friday. Joe Biden was walking out of a presser, not on this entirely, but he was asked this question as he walked out, and this is how he responded. I'll describe it for the listening audience in SOT 8.
Mr. President, can you tell us, sir?
Walking away.
Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that,
Stops.
sir?
Turns.
Do you think the conviction
Smirk.
will have an impact on the campaign? We'd love to hear your
Turns
thoughts,
back.
sir.
Should he be on the ballot, sir?
Slowly shuffles away. What was that?
Yeah, I can't answer that. I have no idea what that was. He doesn't know what that was. Nobody knows what that was. There's no way of knowing what just happened.
For once he held his tongue. He was dying to answer it. Right? He was dying to say he got what he deserved.
I couldn't actually tell if he heard the question.
Oh, he heard it.
It just looked like a total senior moment. He's like shuffling off the stage, and
He would have just kept moving if he didn't hear it.
it's true.
He heard it, and he was, for once, holding his tongue.
It's interesting because he's been trying to walk this line of commenting on the case, but not making it, quote, political. That's the sort of line that we've seen dripped out to the Beltway media outlets recently, is that, Joe Biden he's going to comment on this, but he doesn't want it to look like a campaign thing or politics. So, when the verdict comes out, he's going to be at the White House. Like, that's as political as it gets.
Yeah,
Wasn't that your problem when Trump had the RNC at the White House, is that it was political? And so the nature of the question, it makes me think, if that's what in Joe Biden's head, that's what the wheels were turning. Like, well, you don't want to get too political with this, like the political prisoner question. This is just, Joe, you're just doing this to stay above the fray, to be the bigger man. I have no idea what goes on in his head.
Okay, but meantime, he and Trump, well, more Trump than Biden, are going to have to wrestle with how much this comes up over the next 4 or 5 months, right? Like, Joe Biden may not continue to say convicted felon, right? He hasn't said it yet, but his campaign said it multiple times since it happened. And Donald Trump is talking about it, though it just happened and he just got ungagged. We think, by the way, that was only reported by CNBC, and I quoted them on my show, but I'm not 100% sure that the gag order has been totally lifted. Like, I wonder what would happen to Trump if he went out there and started ripping on the jurors. I actually do wonder. I'm not sure this judge would allow it, which would be really unfair.
Well, you just gave him a fun new idea.
You should do it. They're fair game. I'm sorry. You're not forever immunized from criticism just because you served on a jury. What the hell? Of course you're not. Anyway, we'll see. So Trump has the decision how much, if at all, to mention this going forward, right? Because right now, Republicans are pissed. Sorry, PO'd. That's the one word my mom really doesn't like. She doesn't like any of them, but that's the one she called me on. And they're mad. So you could play into that, but mention it too much instead of inflation and immigration. And I think the patience will run thin, right, pretty quickly. Here's just a little bit. He gave an interview with Fox and Friends Sunday, and he talked about whether he's going to jail or not. SOT 5.
The judge could decide to say, hey, house arrest or even jail.
It could.
How do you face what that could be?
I'm okay with it. I saw one of my lawyers the other day on television saying, oh, no, you don't want to do that to the president. I said, you don't beg for anything.
Don't beg for anything. Maybe he would be okay with it. I don't know. I mean, I think he'd have a different kind of jail experience than the three of us would, but what do you make of the strategy? How much does he talk about it versus other people's issues?
I think it was a powerful primary campaign issue, and his base is following every twist and turn of this. That's an important contingent to continue to keep energized and activated. But he's the general election is on, and he's got to talk about general election issues. And to that, I think being under house arrest or in jail would really impact his ability to go out there and campaign. Being on the trial it impacts his ability to host fundraisers, to meet with donors, and to get out and campaign. And Trump did try to overcome that during the trial, where he could get in front of the camera every day and deliver a 3-minute message. But the same is not going to be true for house arrest or jail. So that could hurt him. I think he should be saying, I need to be able to go out and run my campaign. And it really does undermine democracy if one of the two general election candidates can't get out there and make his case to the people. They know I was convicted. Let the people decide.
That would be powerful. It's tough because I was listening to the New York Times' The Daily today, the podcast, and it's a love-hate relationship, man, because I listen to hear what the left is saying, and then every time you're like, oh my God. So today they were on there talking about how every day, from the Biden camp's perspective, every day Trump talks about this instead of inflation is a win. And I can see that over in Team Biden. I mean, with the caveat that right now, the right is incensed over this. And the more Trump talks about it, probably the more, it keeps that fire alive.
I think there's also one thing that I haven't heard talked about enough, and it's Biden is out here campaigning like he was in 2020 on normalcy and lowercase democracy, restoring, normalcy from all of the chaos of the Trump years. And he's now the one cheering on this norm-shattering, precedent-shattering decision to, potentially sentence the former president to prison, but to convict him on 34 felony counts with, what is the phrase that MSNBC used at one point, like a novel legal theory, something like that. Perfect. But he's now the one that is cheering for the shattering of norms. I don't think that feels normal to people. I don't think that feels decent to people. And I also think it's easy for Biden, like it is for Trump, but it's easy for Biden to get caught up in the spiral of talking. Every time you mention your opponent, you call him convicted felon. And then you pivot to talk about inflation. Well, you probably just undercut whatever you're about to say about inflation with some percentage of the American population in a close election.
But that is the plan. Dan Pfeiffer, the guy who got, Obama elected, he said, first of all, we should never miss an opportunity to refer to him as convicted felon. You cannot say it enough or in enough spaces. It needs to be drilled into the heads of the American people who aren't paying that close of attention. The polls do support that there's some sliver of the electorate that doesn't want to elect a convicted felon. And sadly, the polls are showing that the overwhelming number of Americans polled think this was a real case. They don't know. They're living their lives. They're not paying the close attention.
Well, and how could you with this media? I mean, even if you paid attention, it would be hard. If you only paid attention to the Times, MSNBC, Washington Post, your local Gannett affiliate, it would be really hard to know what the hell just happened.
Even my pal Dan Abrams at News Nation, who I mentioned, who I really like, but their whole mission is to be like down the middle. I mean, what he was saying to me the other night is like, of course, it's illegal to pay off somebody in order to help your campaign. If you pay somebody under a non-disclosure in advance of your election, it's illegal. No, it isn't. It's a lie. It doesn't violate election campaign finance law. It doesn't violate any law. This whole thing was a lie. Being in debt is like sinking in quicksand. You're trapped. You feel helpless. And the harder you struggle, the deeper in debt you can get. If you are trapped in debt, let me throw you a lifeline. Done with Debt. Done with Debt has created a new strategy with one goal in mind: to get you out of debt quickly and permanently. Done with Debt stands between you and your bill collectors. Then they negotiate a plan to end your debt permanently, without bankruptcy and without loans. They can get you out of debt quickly and put more cash in your pocket monthly. But you need to contact Done with Debt right away because some debt solutions expire. It's easy to get started. Just go to donewithdebt.com and get a free consultation. You have nothing to lose. Talk with one of their experts about a strategy that will end your debt faster and easier than you thought possible. Visit donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.